China has several reasons to support Russia amid the Ukraine crisis, such as trade, energy, and strategic interests. First, China is Russia's largest trading partner and has benefited from the economic sanctions imposed by some Western countries on Russia since its invasion of Ukraine. China's trade with Russia reached a record high of $190 billion in 2022, a 30% increase from the previous year. China imports oil, gas, metals, and other raw materials from Russia, and exports machinery, electronics, consumer goods, and other products to Russia. China also supplies Russia with semiconductors and civilian drones that could have military applications. Second, China relies on Russia for its energy security and diversification. China is the world's largest energy consumer and importer, and Russia is one of its main sources of oil and gas. China and Russia have built pipelines and other infrastructure to facilitate energy cooperation. China also supports Russia's nuclear power industry and has expressed interest in its nuclear fuel alliance. Third, China shares with Russia a common opposition to the US-led global order and a desire to challenge its hegemony. China and Russia have a strategic partnership of coordination that reflects their support for each other's security concerns. They have cooperated on various international issues, such as Iran's nuclear program, North Korea's nuclear weapons, Syria's civil war, and Venezuela's political crisis. They have also conducted joint military exercises and enhanced their defense ties. However, China's support for Russia is not unconditional or unlimited. China has not defended Russia on the battlefield or condemned the Western sanctions on Russia. China has also maintained its relations with Ukraine and other countries in the region. China's main interest is to maintain stability and avoid a major war that could disrupt its economic development and global ambitions. China's support for Russia in the Ukraine crisis has come at a high price for Beijing. By siding with Moscow, China has alienated many Western countries and undermined its own foreign policy principles. China has also exposed itself to the risk of US sanctions and increased tensions in its own backyard. China has not openly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine, nor has it called it an invasion. Instead, it has used diplomatic language to call for peace and dialogue. China has also defended Russia's interests in the United Nations and other international forums, resisting Western pressure to isolate Moscow. China's support for Russia is driven by several factors. First, China sees Russia as a strategic partner and a counterweight to US hegemony. The two countries have deepened their cooperation on trade, energy, defense, and technology in recent years. China also benefits from buying Russian oil and gas at discounted prices. Second, China shares Russia's opposition to NATO expansion and US interference in other countries' affairs. China fears that a stronger US presence in Europe could threaten its own interests in Asia. China also worries that supporting Ukraine's sovereignty could set a precedent for other territorial disputes, such as Taiwan or Tibet. Third, China hopes to maintain a balance between Russia and the West, avoiding being drawn into a new Cold War. China wants to keep good relations with both sides and pursue its own economic development. China also wants to avoid a direct confrontation with the US, which could escalate into a military conflict. However, China's support for Russia has also brought serious consequences for Beijing. By backing Moscow, China has damaged its relations with many Western countries, especially the US and its allies. China has faced criticism and distrust from the West for violating international norms and enabling Russian aggression. China has also risked being targeted by US sanctions for aiding Russia. The US has already sanctioned several Chinese companies and individuals for providing satellite imagery, semiconductors, drones, and other products to Russia that could be used for military purposes. More sanctions could follow if China continues to help Russia. China has also walked a tightrope between peace and alliance with Russia. China does not want to see a full-scale war in Europe that could destabilize the world order and harm its own interests. China also does not want to be dragged into a conflict that could jeopardize its own security and sovereignty. China's support for Russia in the Ukraine crisis has shown the limits of their partnership and the challenges of their foreign policy. China has tried to balance its interests and principles, but has ended up compromising both. China has also faced more pressure and isolation from the West and more dependence on Russia.